Picture this. You're standing on a desolate train platform at 2 a.m., rain pouring down, waiting for a delayed locomotive that's already cost taxpayers billions just to exist, all while a sleek, silent, self-driving car could have picked you up from your doorstep 5 minutes ago, zipped you across town in comfort, and dropped you exactly where you need to be, for a fraction of the price. Now multiply that frustration by millions of daily commuters, trillions in wasted infrastructure dollars, and decades of urban planning dogma that's about to get steamrolled by autonomy. If you've ever wondered why we're still pouring fortunes into outdated rails when the future is already cruising our highways, this episode is your wake-up call. By the time we're done, you'll see how self-driving cars aren't just a gadget. They're the death knell for trains, buses, and even those annoying short-haul flights that chew up your day. Buckle up. We're about to dismantle the myth of mass transit supremacy and show why personal, on-demand autonomy is the real game changer. You won't want to miss a second. Welcome back to Future Link, the podcast where we bridge today's tech with tomorrow's world. I'm your host, Brad Smith, diving into the innovations that will reshape how we live, work, and move. If you're tuning in for the first time or you're a regular, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We drop fresh episodes every week. Today, in episode 7, we're tackling one of the hottest debates in urban mobility. Why trains and buses, despite all the hype from urban planners and YouTubers, are fundamentally flawed in an era where self-driving cars are poised to deliver efficient, flexible, and affordable transportation right to your door. We'll break down the insane costs, the inefficiencies, the weak arguments propping them up, and how autonomy leverages what we already have to fix it all. Let's get into it. Let's start with the foundation, literally our existing infrastructure of roads and highways. The United States has an unparalleled network of over 4 million miles of public roads, including nearly 48,000 miles of interstate highways that connect every corner of the country, from bustling cities to remote rural areas. This massive system, built over decades at a staggering cumulative cost in the trillions, is already in place and ready to be optimized by self-driving technology. Highways alone carry 26% of all vehicle miles traveled, while comprising just 2.6% of total lane miles, proving their efficiency in handling high volumes of traffic. And the beauty of it? Self-driving cars don't require ripping up landscapes or eminent domaining properties to lay new tracks. They simply use what's there, turning our existing asphalt arteries into super efficient corridors for autonomous platoons traveling at consistent speeds, reducing congestion and accidents. Contrast that with the ridiculous cost of trains and the infrastructure needed to build them. High-speed rail projects are notorious for ballooning budgets and endless delays. Take California's high-speed rail as a prime example. Initially pitched in 2008 at $33 billion to link San Francisco and Los Angeles, by 2020, the project's cost has exploded to estimates ranging from $128 billion to $135 billion as of 2025, with completion now pushed far into the 2030s or beyond. That's over $200 million per mile in some segments, just for laying track through relatively flat terrain in the Central Valley, not even touching the mountainous challenges ahead. And this isn't unique to California. The UK's HS2 project has seen costs soar to £106 billion, about 130 billion US dollars, with phases cancelled due to overruns. Even urban light rail extensions, like New York City's 2nd Avenue subway, clock in at $2.2 billion per mile, far exceeding initial projections. These figures include not just tracks, but exclusive rights-of-way, bridges, tunnels, electrification, and stations. All bespoke infrastructure that can't be repurposed easily. Meanwhile, expanding an existing highway, adding a lane in urban areas averages around $10 million per mile, and resurfacing a 4-lane road comes in at just $1.25 million per mile. For new construction, a 6-lane urban freeway might run $6 to $68 million per mile, depending on elevation and location. But it's still orders of magnitude cheaper than rail when you factor in utilization. Self-driving cars amplify this advantage by increasing road capacity through tighter following distances and optimized traffic flow, potentially boosting throughput by 60% without adding a single inch of pavement. But the financial drain doesn't stop at construction. Let's talk about the cost of running trains and buses empty. Public transit systems hemorrhage money on operations, with vehicles often rumbling along under capacity or completely vacant. In the US, transit agencies spend billions annually on fuel, maintenance, and labor, yet recover only a fraction from fares. For instance, pre-pandemic data showed $92 billion in total spending on public transit, with fares covering just $16.5 billion, a dismal 18% recovery ratio on average. Post-pandemic, it's even worse. New York's subway system saw its fare box recovery plummet below 5%, forcing massive subsidies to keep the lights on. Buses and trains frequently operate at 20 to 30% capacity outside peak hours, with some routes seeing occupancy as low as 10% during off times, essentially subsidizing empty seats. Operating costs per vehicle revenue mile vary wildly. Buses average $10 to $15 per mile, while light rail can hit $20 to $30 per mile when factoring in higher maintenance for tracks and overhead wires. Examples abound. Detroit's People Mover runs circles downtown, with average ridership under 2,000 per day, costing millions in upkeep for minimal use. Or consider rural bus routes, where vehicles travel dozens of miles with one or two passengers, burning diesel and taxpayer dollars alike. This inefficiency stems from fixed schedules and routes that can't adapt to real-time demand, leading to deadhead miles where vehicles reposition empty, adding 20 to 30% to operational costs. This brings us to the core mismatch. Research shows that most trips from A to B involve fewer than 4 people. The 2022 National Household Travel Survey, NHTS, the gold standard for U.S. travel behavior, reveals Americans make about 4 trips per person daily, with average vehicle occupancy at 1.40 for cars, 1.67 for SUVs, and 1.32 for pickups, overall hovering around 1.5 to 1.6 persons per vehicle. Solo drivers account for over 50% of trips, and 85% involve 2 or fewer people. Trip purposes break it down further. Commuting averages 1.2 occupants, shopping 1.5, and social visits 1.4. Most trips are short too, 50% under 5 miles, ideal for small, efficient vehicles rather than massive trains designed for crowds. This is a proxy for the real demand for transportation. You rarely need a large vehicle to get around, but you need the ability to get from point A to point B. You get a van or a truck for the rare occasions when you need to haul a lot of stuff or people. But for the vast majority of the time, you are moving 1 or 2 people. Urbanists want you to walk to the bus stop and move slowly to your destination, waiting for the bus or train to stop many times along the way. But no one has time for that. You want to get to your destination as quickly as possible. Self-driving cars will make it easy and fast to do the best of both worlds. This underscores why mass transit's one-size-fits-all approach fails. Trains and buses are overkill for these small group or solo journeys, yet they demand you conform to their rigid systems. Compounding this is the last-mile problem, a persistent barrier that urban planners downplay, but studies confirm as a major deterrent to transit use. The last mile refers to the gap between transit stops and your actual origin or destination, often requiring walks of 0.5 to 1 mile or more in inclement weather, with luggage or at odd hours. Research shows riders' willingness to use transit drops sharply beyond a quarter mile, 400 meters walk, with 98% of U.S. transit systems losing riders pre-pandemic due to this friction. Pilot programs integrating micromobility like e-scooters or shuttles have shown mixed results. Some reduce travel time and boost ridership by 10 to 20%, but others fail due to cost or availability issues. Health benefits from walking are touted, but for shorter distances, they often outweigh accessibility gains only marginally, ignoring vulnerable populations like the elderly or disabled. Self-driving cars solve this elegantly. They provide true door-to-door service, eliminating transfers and waits, making the entire journey seamless. Now, let's dismantle the weak arguments that urbanist YouTubers use to justify trains and buses. Channels like Not Just Bikes, RM Transit, and City Nerd passionately advocate for transit, with claims like trains offer massive capacity for dense cities, or buses build walkable communities and reduce car dependency. But these fall flat under scrutiny. First, capacity. While a train can theoretically carry 1,000 plus passengers, real-world occupancy averages far lower, making it inefficient for non-peak times, like flying a jumbo jet with 50 people aboard. Urbanists ignore that U.S. sprawl and low density make high-capacity transit unsustainable in most areas, leading to underused systems that emit more greenhouse gases per passenger mile than cars. Reliability and speed? Trains suffer from delays due to track issues or single incidents, while buses get stuck in the same traffic they claim to alleviate. Arguments for livability romanticize shared spaces but overlook safety concerns, pollution from highway-adjacent stations, and the time lost to inflexible schedules. They decry induced demand from roads, but transit induces its own inefficiencies by forcing density that many reject. Ultimately, these views stem from a bias toward European models that don't translate to America's vast geography, ignoring how autonomy can deliver personalized, eco-friendly mobility without mandating lifestyle changes. Air travel shines for long distances, but for short-haul routes, under 500 miles, it's bogged down by airport commutes, security lines, and boarding delays, often turning a 2-hour flight into a 4 to 5 hour ordeal. Planes are tethered to fixed airports, limiting true flexibility. Self-driving cars, however, can replace these trips entirely. Studies predict AVs could shift 20 to 30% of short-haul air travel to ground transport by reducing the value of travel time through productive or relaxing rides, like working or sleeping en route. For a 300-mile trip, an AV at 70 miles per hour takes about 4 hours door-to-door versus 3+ hours for flying when including extras. And it's cheaper, greener, and more comfortable. Airlines are already worried. Regional jets could become obsolete as AVs offer on-demand, non-stop luxury. And self-driving cars will take you from door to door and will be able to replace short plane trips as we've discussed. But their advantages go further. Current Waymo rides cost around $1.66 to $2.50 per mile, but projections for 2025 to 2030 see drops to 0.25 to 1.10 per mile as fleets scale and batteries cheapen, undercutting even bus fares. With 100,000 paid rides weekly already, companies like Waymo and Tesla are expanding rapidly, promising 50% cost reductions by 2030. Finally, other points about trains and buses highlight their outdated nature. Environmentally empty transit vehicles often emit more per passenger mile than efficient EVs. Safety? Trains face derailments, buses accidents, and traffic. Accessibility suffers from station barriers, while AVs offer wheelchair ramps and voice controls. Jobs? Transit employs unionized drivers, but AVs create roles in tech and maintenance. Rural areas, ignored by rail, gain from AVs on existing roads. Weather disrupts tracks. AVs adapt with sensors. In short, trains are 19th century tech. AVs are the future. Wrapping up, self-driving cars leverage our roads, match real demand, and deliver luxury at scale. The pivot is inevitable. Don't get left at the station. If this episode got your gears turning, follow me on X and YouTube at ALS Cyborg for daily insights on AI and autonomy. Subscribe on X for $5 a month to support me. Like, share, and join the conversation. See you next time on Future Link.